Perfect. Okay.
Go when you're ready.
Okay, guys, I'm standing with Nate Stanton. If you guys don't know anything about this guy, he will explain to you right now.
Yeah, you know, I've been in the animation industry for over 30 years, if you can believe that. Oh my God, I am that old. But much of my career was spent at Pixar.
Wow.
In the story trenches, storyboarding on 15 movies over 22 years. So that's the bulk of my experience, yes.
Well, so you are from Pixar, that's in America. What are you doing in South Africa?
Well, I was lucky to be found by Sunrise Animation Studios here in Cape Town. They somehow discovered me, sent me an email, and I started working for them remotely over the year of COVID in 2020. But my family and I came out here and visited and loved it. And so we decided to take the adventure and move out here, and we've been here for 3 years.
That is insane. And I want to call you a seasoned artist at this point in your career, right?
Say it, yes.
What would you say to your younger 20-year-old self at this point in your career?
Oh, wow. You know what? I think I would probably say I should have done a little bit more in school because I was not the best student, but a lot of my career has just been timing.
Wow.
So I don't think I would change anything, honestly. I was very lucky in terms of where I found myself and how I found my way to Pixar.
Wow.
That's a really good question. It probably would be, should have done a little bit more in school to sort of lay the track down for your career. That would probably be it.
That's awesome. So like the foundation would have been a little nicer.
I spent just as much time partying as doing schoolwork, let's just put it that way. And I enjoyed the 4 years that it was awesome. But again, the timing was perfect because when I left school, which was 1992, and moved to San Francisco, which I was dying to live at, I looked for work in LA, but like anything, it's hard to get that first job, right? And I just said, you know what, I'm going to move to San Francisco just because I'm young and I can do it and I really want to live there.
That's awesome.
And so because I was living there, I got my first job on The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Amazing.
It was just because I was living there and I had a friend working on the movie. So I have zero regrets about how I found myself to my first job.
And so on that note, how much of getting to this part of your career was luck, like percentage of luck and percentage of your own skill?
Again, I don't think it's so much luck. It was more the people that I met at school. That was the foundation because my first job was with a classmate.
Yeah.
And then getting into Pixar was my old story teacher who was working there at the time.
Brilliant.
So I had enough experience to get into that company, but I'm really glad that I stayed because at first it was a little tricky moving from 2D animation to storyboarding. It's a different skill set, but they were very patient. And they were just young enough as a company that they needed people. So I was hired as part of the wave of hires that one year in 1996 for A Bug's Life. And so I stuck it out, and they stuck it out.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I did. So no, it was more just, a lot of it for me is just kind of being in the right place at the right time. It happened here when I came here and ended up having to switch to working for Triggerfish and Netflix. And when that job finished, literally the month before my contract was over, Sunrise found some more funding, and they called me up and said, hey, would you want to come back and work on this movie as an assistant director?
That's
and
amazing.
Obviously, I said, perfect timing, yeah. So a lot of it, honestly, for me, has just been kind of timing.
Wow.
And be willing to just try different things. But that really has been sort of how my career has sort of winded. And
Amazing. And you, now with this long career, like what would you say is the favorite thing that you've worked on thus far?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. Honestly, one of my favorite things is the very first movie, Nightmare Before Christmas. Is so unique. I love stop motion. It's the only film I've ever worked on that was stop motion. It's also the only film or project that I've worked on where the actual animation I did, or assistant animation, is actually on the screen.
Yeah.
Every time you do story and storyboarding, nobody really sees that work.
Yeah.
You're just sort of the foundation of the movie. You might have ideas or scenes that are in there.
Right.
I'd say maybe WALL-E and Finding Nemo are two of my favorite things. Right now it's more about just who I'm working with and the experience. And right now the experience I'm having at Sunrise is excellent. I'm getting to be an assistant director. I'm actually developing another film for them.
Yeah.
And there's a possibility of me directing my own short. So I'm quite happy where I've landed, and then we're enjoying the adventure of being in Cape Town.
What was it like working with Tim Burton?
Oh, honestly, he was not there. Tim Burton is the one who sort of, it's his idea.
Yeah.
And the whole way that movie came about is because he was working at Disney. He came up with the idea while he was at Disney, and then he left because it just wasn't a good fit for him, right?
Wow.
And then obviously he went on to this very incredible career, starting with Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then the Batman movies and Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
And so Disney was basically like, hey, why don't you come back and work for us? Like, you're great now. We would love you to work. So Tim said, okay, I want to make this movie, The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I created, but I don't want to do it in Los Angeles. I want to do it somewhere else so you guys can't really be too involved involved, which is why it was happening in San Francisco. And he picked a very good friend of his and a classmate, I think also of CalArts, Henry Selick, to direct the movie. So I primarily worked directly with Henry and my friend Mike Cochuela, who was the animator that I was assisting. I never got to meet Tim, unfortunately. But I loved working on his film and his ideas. Honestly, the thing that got me into animation, really, like in general, was his short film. He made a 1982 short film called Vincent, which is an incredible short film. If you haven't seen it, it's amazing. And that's what inspired me to really focus on animation.
Brilliant.
As a teenager.
What was the difference between working in LA compared to South Africa in the animation industry?
Well, I mean, it's wildly different. The Cape Town animation scene is very small, but it actually reminds me a lot more of the scene in San Francisco, which is where much of my career was in San Francisco. I never worked in LA, honestly. I looked for work, couldn't find it, and then moved to San Francisco and then found the job on Nightmare. That was a much smaller community, and it feels very similar to Cape Town. And honestly, working at Sunrise right now, they're a smaller company, but they're growing. They remind me of the early days of Pixar as well, which is that really fun sort of like scrappy phase of a company full of raw talent, people that have enough experience. This is their third feature they've done, and it feels great to be in that environment. So it actually reminds me more of the San Francisco scene. There were a lot of smaller animation houses in San Francisco, and Pixar was the first sort of like big one, and a kind of only one. That was sort of a place that you could find work that was long-term and feature work. Yeah.
And absolutely last question.
Yes.
You mentioned a short film that you're working on.
Yes.
Is there anything you can tell us about it?
I really can't, because it's actually an idea that I pitched years ago in the States, and I brought it with me here, and they really liked it at Sunrise. So we've created a pitch deck that sort of sat around for a while, but when they brought me back to be an assistant director on David, part of the deal for me was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I got to be able to make my short. And luckily, the owner of Phil Cunningham said, yes, we want to make it. So I can't really say what it's going to be, but ideally I get to make it, and then it'll be put out there either in front of one of their movies, or ideally it gets into the festival circuit. That's what I would like. So my goal is to start working on that at the end of this year. That's my hope. But I'm also developing a whole other movie for them. So I've got like 3 things that I'm kind of doing at the same time, which is actually insane. It's a good thing. Doing multiple things.
Always. I'm sorry to do this to you, but absolutely last question. For young South Africans right now who are wanting to get into the animation industry or are trying to get into the animation, what would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten or can give to everyone?
Well, I get asked that a lot, and what young people are learning and what the world that they're entering is so radically different from the world that I entered. Honestly, when I was starting, the best way to get a job was to be an assistant 2D animator, because they always needed people. You would need an army of in-betweeners and assistants, and that was my first job. So here, I don't know what it is. I think it's whatever that skill set is, and I think I get a sense that it's more in the CG world. It's modeling and building assets, and it's learning that skill set, whatever skill set it is, that will get you that first job, and just be willing to do it, however small or big it is. And then ideally you move that into the next job, right? But the whole thing post-COVID, it's a whole different world. They could get a job that's being done in France and still live here. They could get a job that's being done in Texas, in the US. That's a whole different world. So the hard part is just getting that first job. But for me, it was just having the skill set to do that job. So I think here it's just, what is that skill set? And that's what I'm kind of learning again. But the CG world, it's a whole different thing. Like, what are those entry-level jobs? And this, again, the sense I'm getting, it's more modeling, it's more surfacing. It's what is the post-production process where you have to surface everything and light everything. I think those are probably the areas that you might find the best way to get in. I'm just assuming this, but it's just learn as much as you can. If you want to get into film, study film. That's the one thing that I learned a lot when I was at Pixar. It was like, oh wow, I need to watch a lot more movies because I want to learn how to structure a scene. That's what you're doing when you're storyboarding. If you want to learn how to light things or build things, and you obviously look at that aspect of movie making. I don't know if that's advice, but it's just sort of figuring out what it is that's going to get you that first job.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. Okay, guys, thank you.
We actually have a gift for you.
I forgot about this. During this year, we gave ourselves a month to put together a comic book for a brand new concept that we're working on called Rojo: The Age of Masks.
Okay.
And we want to present you a free comic, free physical copy, and yeah, hope you like it.
Oh, I'm sure I will. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for staying with us and doing this. This is amazing. Thank you.
I'm so glad I ran into you.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.